Steve Hewlett is one of the country's most popular, funny and accomplished ventriloquists. He was a finalist on the 7th series of Britain's Got Talent in 2013. And he's on the line with us here just now. How are you doing today?
Hi, Tony. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. It's Toby with a B. You did it again.
I keep saying Toby, and does it sound like I'm saying Tony?
Yes, that's weird.
Toby. I promise you, I'm moving my lips.
Yes, that's weird. Must be a ventriloquist thing. So
Yeah,
when did you first realise that you had this talent for ventriloquism?
And pronouncing people's names wrongly. So when I was 12 years old, and I saw a TV ventriloquist called Jimmy Tamley. He won the talent show back then in 1987 was called New Faces. That was the equivalent of Britain's Got Talent. And I was watching this ventriloquist who lived 5 minutes from my house. And it's the only reason me and my family sat down to watch because he was local. And he was brilliant. He was funny. He had characters. I didn't really know the workings of a ventriloquist. I knew he was a comedian, but he had these puppets and dummies and things. And I was so fascinated. The next morning after he won, because he won that grand final, and Jimmy Tamley, I knocked on his front door because my mate at school lived opposite him. But now I know, being a cabaret artist, you don't wake people up at least till 11 o'clock because that they work nights, you know. So I used to knock on his door about 8 o'clock in the morning before I went to school. I know now that he probably didn't appreciate that. And we become like godparents to each other. So I used to stay over at his house, and he would let his kids jump on my bed at 7 o'clock in the morning to get his own back. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you come from a theatrical family at all?
Not at all. My granddad was a farmer, and my dad was a farmer. So they were, I could have made all the animals talk if they stayed on the farm, but they actually left when I was 1 year old. So I never really saw the farming industry. But so those 12 years, we just had a great childhood. But my dad loved music. My mum loves comedy. So we watched loads of variety TV shows as a family of six, me and my siblings growing up. So watching all those variety shows, The Muppet Show, and I love that poster of the Muppets right behind you, Toby. That was Toby, I said again.
Yes.
And so it was just brilliant, as a childhood. But when I saw this ventriloquist, I thought, I really want to try that. That is amazing. And I was the shyest kid at school. I was, like teacher's pet. They'd look after me because they knew I was quiet and shy. So they were flabbergasted, and my parents were shocked when they knew I wanted to go on stage and entertain. I would hide behind the dummies. And you hear this, it's a cliche. You hear this with actors and impressionists and puppeteers. We hide behind characters, and that's what we do. And that's what I do.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I suppose that on the one hand you are hiding behind a character, and then on the other hand you're still yourself as well, because you're playing two roles.
Yes. Yeah, I am an actor in a way. And I never thought I was. And then somebody probably 20 years ago said, because you do act, you know that. Oh, I guess I do. Because I'm reacting to the characters, and they say something to me, I get annoyed, I look annoyed, and then I reply to them in another way, and they've created that reaction from me, which is me to begin with. It's very confusing to explain. I've never actually had to explain that before, but so I am an actor. We're puppeteers, stand-up comedians, actors, and there's so many, components that go into a ventriloquist act.
Yeah. Now, when you went on Britain's Got Talent, you'd already been a professional ventriloquist for 10 years. And I think you've said before that it is a bit risky to go on a big show like that when you've already had a successful career, because it could make or break you.
Definitely, yeah. I had a few friends that had been on a few years previous that I knew of. Damon Scott came second. He was a puppeteer in the very first season. And then I think it was Paul Potts that won. He came second to Paul. And so Paul Berlin, also, he came fifth, I think, in the final 2 or 3 years before I did, 2010. So they warned you, but they had successes. I had 2 or 3 friends that done really well on the show. I turned it down. I was initially going to do a show called Paul O'Grady's Got Talent. I auditioned for that, and I went down really well with the four producers, but they cancelled the show, and Simon Cowell bought the show because Paul O'Grady went to Channel 4. So anyway,
Yeah.
so I went for it. So they had my name on file. So every year that Britain's Got Talent was on, I was asked to do the show. But once I'd seen the actual show go out, I thought, oh, I think it's more for amateurs, so I don't. And I was a professional ventriloquist, so I thought, well, I'm not going to go for it now. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And so I turned it down on year 2, year 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then I started to see every year a couple of my cabaret friends, comedians and impressionists, magicians started to go on it. I thought, oh, hang on, they're now doing the show and they're actually getting tours out of it. Some
Yeah.
of them are getting back on television. So I've got no other options. There's nowhere to go. I've been doing cruise ships, pantomimes, holiday parks for 20 years. I thought I'm going to have to just go for it. So I got a
Yeah.
call in January 2013. The producer of BGT, they said, if you come on the show, you could win the Royal, a place at the Royal Variety. That's the thing really that made me go to the Palladium that week to do it. So they called me twice that week. I said no the first time in 2013. And when they called me back again, I thought, you know what? We just had a baby. She was about 6 months old, 6 or 7 months, Lola. And I had no work because I didn't want to go away as a new father. So I usually, after pantomime, you do cruise ships. So I just done Panto with Craig Revel Horwood and Anne Widdecombe in High Wycombe. And I
Wow.
had a brilliant time. But and you're on top of the world when you come out of pantomime. You had a great time with Kudos back then. But I didn't want to go away again because usually you do 3 or 4 weeks on cruise ships. So I said no to the ships. So I had a free diary. So I thought, okay, I could go and have a great night at the London Palladium and then think nothing of it. So I did that. I done about 6 minutes on stage. I had a standing ovation. It went crazy. When it goes out on air, you watch YouTube, they show 20 seconds and Ollie Murs is singing over my audition. It's quite frustrating.
Yeah.
You don't have control on that edit.
Yeah.
But I did do the show in the end. It could have made or broke me, which I have seen that in the past with mutual friends, that have been on the show. And it's really sad that they have to go through that. And sometimes it's in the edit where they actually make you look bad. They can put, bad reactions onto the show
Yeah.
and that weren't actually necessarily there when you did your show, so they can make you look worse than you actually went down. But I did go great. They just showed, 20 seconds and then it was up to me. So if I was going to get on the show, everyone was saying, don't worry, because I was ready to watch that audition, and think I got a great 6 minutes at the Palladium. The crowd went crazy. And I was doing a magic show at the Wolverhampton. It was the football ground. And we was doing a conference room. And my brother came with me, said, I'll come and watch BGT with you when you go out. So we sat backstage before I went on actual stage to do my show. My brother said, I'll go and get us a pint of lager. I went, yeah, I'll have half a lager and you have a pint. So he got us a drink each and he missed it. I said, oh, Dave, you missed it. He went, no, you're joking. I went, no, literally, it was over like that. It was 20 seconds. He went, oh, you're joking. We've been waiting 6 months for this. And so, although that was very disappointing, everybody would text me that night. Don't worry, Steve, if you get on the live shows, that's when you make it count. And that's what's now on YouTube. And so that's 9 years ago now. Long time.
And if it had happened earlier on in your career, do you think you would have coped with the exposure and all the success?
I don't think so because with what I did get, I coped with it and I loved it. I done all the radio interviews and other TV shows. I managed to get on lots of corporate gigs and stuff and meeting people coming to your shows. I booked a theatre tour. We'd done 42 dates around the UK, my first ever theatre show. And I loved all that because I love meeting people. My passion really is making people laugh and just really enjoying the show business. I have got a passion for the past as well. I've written a book now on ventriloquists, not ventriloquism. It's not teaching you how to do it. It's talking about the great ventriloquists that inspired me and ventriloquists that inspired them, that inspired me. So it's, 100 years of great music hall acts up until TikTok ventriloquists to these days. So that book, So I guess BGT was my big break, and now I'm kind of verging in different directions. I host a podcast called Eyes and Teeth. I've written a book which should be out in 2023, and I'm still out there performing and doing shows and
Yeah.
variety shows, and I'm back in Panto this year, so it's all great.
Yeah, well, you've worked with the Osmonds and Ken Dodd and people like that. It doesn't get much bigger, does it?
Well, they are two of the biggest names in variety around the world. You know, for the
Yeah.
UK, Ken Dodd was god of variety and god of the variety world. You can't get bigger than the Osmonds. They worked with on the Andy Williams Christmas show, and
Yeah.
they've worked all over the world. They were a big pop group, but they were variety. You know, the ventriloquists and comedians and magicians supported them for years. I'd done 2 years with the Osmonds, and hearing Jimmy Osmond's stories with, he worked with some of my heroes like Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, and because he was a great producer and a businessman, Jimmy Osmond, he worked with Michael Jackson and on separate projects, but he also spoke about all the ventriloquists that he'd worked with over the years. And I was like, you're joking. You knew Shari Lewis, you know, you knew Ron Lucas. And Ron Lucas was my childhood hero. He came over here as a ventriloquist in the early 90s and done 4 TV series over here. And I brought him back because I befriended Ron Lucas. I didn't knock on his door because he lived in LA.
Yeah.
But we stayed in touch, you know, when I met him on his TV show. And then I brought him over to do a couple of shows in Basingstoke and Eastbourne, and we hung out for 10 days. He was one of my heroes, became one of my dearest friends. He wrote the foreword for the book. So, you know, we became really close, me and Ron. But it was actually, you know, just people like that inspired me. And I never forget that time they gave me when I was a kid. I now kind of pass that on, you know, to another generation.
Yeah. So, how do you go about creating a character?
I get so many ideas. People give me the idea, give me, they're already written down. I've got a list of 100 characters I could get made, but you know, I do lectures and talks on ventriloquists and ventriloquism, and I get a lecture for my wife if I have another prop arrive in the post. So you can't buy every prop and idea out there. So I've had an idea for a guitar dummy. Rod Vegas is in my show now. He plays the guitar. I've had a dancing dummy, you know, and they all take technical sort of finances needed, you know, for those. So you have to put a lot of work into them. So I've got a lot of characters that I've kind of sit down and I think of a character. I think that'll be a great idea. I can get it designed. So I email my creators. At the moment, I use Peter Pullen quite a lot, who created a lot of the greats. Or Orville the Duck, excuse me, Roger the Corsi's Nookie Bear, and you know, Emu from Rod Hull. So Peter Pullen would do a sketch. He'd send that sketch back, and then I'd say, I love that. He would then mold it. He'd send me a picture of the mold, and then he'd just make this character. He's maybe about 16, 17 characters over, you know, about 10 years. Wow. And so the character comes really, I don't really find a voice until the character arrives. So I sit down with the character, I look in the mirror, and I think, oh, that would be great. This would be great. This voice works, or that voice works. Arthur Lager was quite easy because I got an old man character, and I just tried to make it sound a bit older than myself, really. So it was like, hello, I'm Arthur Lager. No, I'm Arthur Lager. Make it a little bit deeper in the back of the throat. Hello, I'm Arthur Lager. How are you? Nice to see you. Hello. It's a little bit grumpy, a little bit moody, and, you know, it's a little bit more gristly at the back of the throat, you know. So that's where the old man comes from.
Yeah. And which one of your characters would you say is your favourite to perform?
I think Arthur, I've got a lot of freedom with him. I get away with a lot using him. I say what I want to say because I'm very easily distracted, but I use that with the characters. So if someone runs across the dance floor, I don't look at them, but my eyes have clocked them, and I make the puppet look directly at them. So it freaks the audience out. But I'm talking about something, and I make it happen where the puppets stop talking, but I carry on talking. And then I can talk a load of gobbledygook, you know, while the puppet is actually staring, and the audience clock it straight away. So, and then the puppet stops me talking and goes for his victim, you know. So Yeah, I do love that. I love that sort of reaction. You can use the characters so much, but I get away with it. So Arthur Largo is great. My wife's favorite, Nina's favorite, is Pongo the skunk. Pongo is more of a Muppet style character. You know, he's a
Mm.
skunk puppet, quite a large character, but he's very cheeky. He's very
Yeah.
naughty, cheeky, naughty. So the kids love him, and the adults love him. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to rearrange his act at the moment and start afresh because he's been doing the same act for 25 years. So,
Yeah. And I suppose it is quite important to, when the character might not be speaking, to still keep them alive and not just have them being really still or just giving up and maybe only focusing on your own performance. You have to still make the audience believe that they are living, even if they're not speaking.
yes, that's more difficult when you're holding two characters. And I do an act where
Mm.
I do use two characters. I'm very mindful of the other one. While one's talking, the other one has to be moving as well. You have to be
Mm.
ambidextrous. You know, so Ponga the skunk is talking. Hello, how are you? Nice to see you. And then the tiny Tina, the little girl character, has to react to what he's saying, so she can nod her head or shake her head while he's nodding or talking. And I do try and make sure they're always alive. And there's this wonderful, this is in the book, by the way, Terry Hall and Lenny the Lion, way before your time, Toby. But they were wonderful ventriloquist acts. But
Mm.
when they would do pantomime, the stage manager said, there's a couple of children would like to meet you. And Terry Hall said, please don't bring them in just yet. Just give me a minute. And so he would have to bring Lenny the Lion to life before
Mm.
the children came into the door. So he'd put his hand in Lenny and make sure that he did not want the children to see the character with no life in them and
Yeah.
no character, you know. So it's very nice that, because you're true to your work and your passion and your art, if you don't ruin the illusion for the kids, because the children believe, you know, these characters are alive. And if you saw the Muppets, you know, sort of lying there. I mean, I worked on Disney cruise ships, and you'd be backstage. I'm a big fan of Donald Duck. Donald is my favorite. And
Yeah.
when I saw him lying there before the dancers got there to do the opening show on Disney, I was mortified. Really, it does break your heart when you see characters having a break. Do you know what I mean? Lying
Yeah.
down but not moving. You think,
Yeah.
I nearly gave Donald Duck a mouth to mouth. I was worried, and so beak to beak. You know, so
Yes.
you do have to keep your characters alive, even if it's backstage. You know, if there's kids walking about, I try not to let them see it. I
Yeah.
remember what I was told about Terry Hall, because his dear wife told me that he would never see it. So I try and carry that on, really, in his honor, because it is quite magic. Keith Harris was the same with Orville. You know, he didn't
Yeah.
want children to think Orville was a prop. You know, and to me, they're props though.
Yeah.
Arthur Largo's lying on the floor now. You wouldn't see that, but if he's going to pop up here before we go, then you'll see that he's alive. You know.
Uh-huh. Well, what would you say is your proudest achievement in your whole career?
The career, I always think of that. I always think of my children, you know, that, because I'm very proud of my daughters, and my wife is incredible. She's an incredible mum. And so yeah, you would instinctively think to be a father, you know, but
Mm.
you said career, so I'm going to talk about the career side of things. So it's Britain's Got Talent was a great thing, but that's what brought me to America. So I've
Mm.
done 2 years with the Osmonds. I wouldn't have had that YouTube clip. Jimmy Osmond wouldn't have phoned me and asked me to come to the States. So I'm
Yeah.
very proud of the Osmonds' legacy. I've just been to see the Osmonds musical that Jay Osmond wrote, and
Wow.
to think I hung out with him for 2 Christmases is just incredible. But what he has brought to the stage is beautiful. And I may not have seen the Osmonds musical if I didn't work with them, you know, but I kind of know that some of the brothers, so it was a beautiful thing. And I got that because of what I do. I'm a ventriloquist, and I supported, you know, one of the biggest groups in the world. But it's that is one of the things. So Britain's Got Talent has to be really the catalyst for that, because that got me to the Royal Albert Hall. I supported Kenny G at the Albert Hall. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have done my theatre tours around the UK. Next year I'm touring another 20 theatres on my third UK tour, which is an extension of this year, at the COVID thing, you know, that
Yeah.
stopped. So they're scattered all over the place. But I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for my 15 minutes on Britain's Got Talent. So
Yeah.
that is probably the proudest moment, because the BGT stuff on those live shows were incredible. And I love sometimes looking back at that,
Yeah.
because that was me in my prime, I guess. But the proudest moment for me is when I released this book. This book is a culmination of 25, well, it is literally 35 years. This year is my 25th anniversary as a professional, but I've been doing it for 35 years. That moment when in 87, when I bumped into Jimmy Tamley, and so it does go back to 1987 when I started. 35 years, because all of the ventriloquists that I wrote to, and they wrote back, those letters are going in the book. So it literally is been a 35-year project. So the
Wow.
most proud I'm ever going to be, if I'm not here anymore, people can say, oh, you can get his book. His book
Yes.
is there, and it will tell you all about his career and his connections with other ventriloquists, all of his favorite ventriloquists. And yeah, it literally has taken me at least 20 years to write, from scratch. But there's things from before that time that was all in the book. And it's just an amazing art, ventriloquism, because it was a dying art. But if you know people like Jeff Dunham and David Strassman, Ron Lucas,
Yeah.
Terry Fator, and, Jeff Dunham, all those people, they've made it big again. They've kept it going. And the Britain's Got Talent franchise is helped that along as well, because
Yeah.
it's gone all around the world.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else coming up for you that you haven't mentioned?
Do you know what? You asked me a question and I just reel everything off, didn't I? I basically told you everything I'm doing the next 10 years. But I am starting to do lectures on, but it's not
Ooh.
lectures, it's a fun talk on ventriloquists.
Yeah.
So it's to coincide with the book. So I'm doing them leading up to the book. And when the book's out, I've got something to sell at the end of the talk. But I talk about the flamboyant lifestyles and the difficult times of ventriloquists that had these amazing careers around the world and worked with Sinatra and all of these big people in Vegas's and on cruise ships. These days
Yeah.
it's all on cruise ships. But now I'm doing these talks that are going to be going for the next couple of years. I really enjoy doing them, and it's the magic societies that are booking them at the moment. But I'm trying to open them up to the normal people that remember the ventriloquists. You just sit down and watch the Sunday night at the Palladium when they was in their teens, and now they're in the 60s and 70s. They're the people that are going to love chat, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to reach out to universities and colleges to teach them about this art of entertainment that it is quite rare, but it's coming back,
Yeah.
quite big as well. It's especially in America, everything's bigger in America, isn't it?
Yes, certainly. Now, where are we able to keep up to date with you and send you fan mail and also fan mail to your characters?
Yes, you can write to us at the stevehewlettshow.com. So my website's up there. You can email me through that website. It's all direct. It's all me running it. So it's the stevehewlettshow.com. And I've got a YouTube channel. So the Steve Hewlett Show, you can go to there and look at loads of silly videos I've posted over 20 years. But it's, yes, you can write to us there. And you can come and see us in Cardiff at the new theatre in Panto this year in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And if you're a
Ooh.
Steps fan, I'm with Ian Watkins. H from Steps is headlining with us. So we've got some
Wow.
great people there. I'm working with a dear friend, Mike Doyle, as well. I'm very excited to go back to Panto, Toby, because I've not
Yeah.
been to Panto for 6-7 years. I've not performed in one for that long. And so it would be fantastic to go back, because I love working with a family, and that's what you get.
Yeah.
Is in Panto, is working with people that you become lifelong friends with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, many thanks for joining us today. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Tony Gribben, and I'm sure I said Toby, because I mean your name's right in front of me. So
Yes.
if it sounds like I said Tony, I don't remember saying Tony today. But your name is Toby Gribben, and I'll make sure I
Yes.
will always write that down as Toby and not Tony.